My name is Ken Federnick. You may have seen me on the up in front last night. I've worked at Cal State University for 20 years, and then I headed up the School Turnaround Center at West Ed and did a lot of work in the area of labor management collaboration, having discovered that in schools that were struggling, it was almost always the case that there was the absence of collaboration, and when we addressed that, and both at the school side and district level, things started to change a lot. But the focus of this presentation today is really about defining what we mean by collaboration. So I'm going to just launch right into this and start with this. You probably remember this brief passage from Alice in Wonderland. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there, the Cheshire Cat says to Alice. But it's also the case, if we can't agree on what we mean, any definition will do, and it applies to collaboration. And oftentimes we use words like student engagement and all kinds of educational vocabulary, and we think we know what we mean, but people have very different ideas about it. So here's a couple of definitions. So what does this one elicit in your mind when you see that picture? What does that say to you about collaboration?
A group getting along. Happy.
People getting along. Yeah, people are happy. What's that?
They're getting ready to go to the bar.
Or they've just been there. Yeah, so that's a really common idea, and it's not wrong. I mean, but the idea that we're a team, we like being with each other is certainly one characteristic. Here's another one.
Call to the principal's office.
And this is the idea, I think, that it really doesn't fit into the effective collaboration, but it's this idea that, all right, I'll be happy to meet with you, and I'll listen to what you say, and in the end, I'll decide, which is not a feature of collaboration when it occurs in school districts and in schools that are functioning really well. And here's the last one, and just ponder that one a little bit, and raise your hand if you have an idea about what the connotation of that cartoon is. Any idea?
Politics.
Politics, perhaps.
What I can do for you.
Sorry?
What I can do for you.
What I can do for you?
Pass off what I don't want.
Yeah.
Passing the buck.
Passing the buck? Yeah, that's good. What I thought of when I saw this, and it's a common perception among some, both on labor side and management, that if people are cozying up with each other, that people will be making secret deals and giving away the store and doing things, and it won't be able to trust them. School boards sometimes think that about superintendents if they're a bit too friendly with labor, and teachers and some union members can sometimes feel uneasy if their union leaders are cozying up and they act too friendly to the other side, because there's a sense that they might actually not be engaged in collaboration, but rather in collusion. So we want to, it's important for leaders to be able to reassure their various constituents that that's not happening. And if you don't, and believe me, it's been a real hazard and a risk that leaders take when they engage in this, if they don't do the kinds of things that reassure others. So what is effective labor management collaboration? That's really the focus of this session today, is to define some characteristics that are common in districts and in schools where it's effective. What do I mean by effective? It's really the kind of collaboration that leads to better policies, better educational practices, and ultimately to better student learning. And we know about some of these things because a number of districts, hundreds of districts around the country have engaged in it. And lots of case studies have been written about them. And over the past year, I have spent the year actually writing a book called Only Together, The Case for Labor Management Collaboration, and it's going to be published at the end of this year, I'm pleased to say, by Harvard Education Press. So what I did was I pulled out a chapter of the book, and that's what's sitting in the middle of your table. And it's the chapter that defines 8 essential features of collaboration. Here they are listed, and I'll just let you take a moment to read them. Anyone want to share out responses to any of those questions on the front screen? Something that really struck out. Yes, Stephen.
I appreciated the need for collaboration all the way from the site level to the national level. And at the state level, we've seen collaboration in, say, San Jose that got shut down because they couldn't get a waiver from the state board or from the state superintendent of public instruction who promoted collaboration. So there's a lot of irony, I think, in the effort to promote collaboration and then to shoot it down when it occurs.
Yeah. And going the other direction, most of the writing and the conversations about labor management collaboration is between school boards and superintendents and labor leaders at the district level, but it often doesn't get translated to the school level. And really, if it isn't happening there, you might maybe get better contracts, maybe better policies, but where it's really powerful is when teachers and administrators at the site level learn how to do it. And I think that was a great story from ABC Unified. Other observations? Yes.
I think that one of the things that struck me is this, the idea of explicitly including things in contracts, and that's an area of tension. If we're doing it, why do we need to write it down? And it's a whole other conversation about why you would put collaborative language into a contract. Well, if we're being collaborative, why do we have to memorialize it? And it talks to shifting leadership and shifting change, shifting time. But I think recognizing that there are a lot of tensions around doing that especially if the collaboration is one that is more newly formed. Because then it almost feels like mistrust. Well, why do we have to write it down?
Yeah.
So I think that that's just a conversation to pay attention to. That point was really important in there to make.
Please. Thanks, Kate. Other, something that struck a chord. Yes?
One thing, and this is in feature 3, one thing that I really appreciated is that it talks about how leaders on all sides typically get together to talk about those things handled in the contract or changes in working conditions, but it can go beyond that. And we can talk about things like low graduation rates. And we can use our skills in collaborating that we have from dealing with contract issues to collaborating to figure these larger issues out. And I really like that idea as a teacher.
It has to go beyond the contract. This it's really not worth talking about having a conference if it's just about bargaining better, which is really important. But it really does need to impact everything that affects teaching and learning. And when you heard San Juan talking last night, they had a long list of things, from evaluation to assessment and all kinds of things that are going on in the district that are happening through collaboration that they're not required to bargain about. But they realize, both sides realize, that we're much better off if we're talking about everything that impacts teaching and learning together. So what I'd like you to do now is to take about 3 minutes in your group just to, and you won't be able to get to everyone, but to share with each other an area where perhaps one of these features isn't present in your district and you hope that it could be stronger. Okay? So just focus, think a little bit about all the features you heard about, not necessarily the ones you read yourself, and share with each other where you'd like to strengthen it. When you have your district team time, presumably you and some of your colleagues from your district will have been here together and will have read maybe the same sections or different ones. But this document may be something, a focal point for you and your colleagues to talk about and go through each of the features when you get back. Maybe start that conversation today. Where are we relative to feature number 1? where do we want to be, what do we need to get there, and go through each of the features and figure out. It's a nice way to sort of assess where you are and to create a plan on what you're going to do and prioritize. I just want to leave you, we're out of time, but I want to leave you with 2 closing thoughts. I want you to, as you think about labor management collaboration, to think about what's at stake. In doing this research and focusing on this for a number of years and working with colleagues who have been doing it many more years than I have, including Kate McKenna here, who's been doing this work for a really long time, I've come to the conclusion that, as many others have, that creating great schools is really impossible without collaboration. Collaboration is no guarantee that you'll succeed, but without it, you're sort of dead in the water. It's really impossible. Creating great schools is hard enough when we're working together, and impossible when we're not. So that's really, I think, what's at stake. And the second thing I would say, as you go back, I hope that many of you will leave inspired by this conference and excited and will go back. But I would urge you to follow the advice that Glenn Price mentioned up there, and it's actually one of the strategies in the book I talk about, is the idea of going slow to go fast. Because if you go back to your district and you, with a great deal of enthusiasm, and you announce to your colleagues, we're going to do labor, we're going to become partners. Your colleagues did not attend this conference. So they need to, you need to share what you learned, but how often do people come back from conferences with the next best great idea and share it, and you wonder and everyone's unenthusiastic? So you have to be subtle, and you have to share what it is and make sure they have an opportunity to try to experience what you experienced. And when you get a critical mass of people that get enthusiastic and are inspired, that want to do it, then you reach a tipping point. Things can change dramatically, but you have to go slow at first to make sure that people understand what this is about and have an opportunity to choose to do what it is that perhaps you've already decided you want to do. And if that happens, great things can happen. So with that, I'm going to sign off and thank you so much for coming and, and communicating and collaborating with each other.